Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. This time, we're doing something kind of special. We're diving into a system one of you, our listeners, actually developed.
That's right. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, you call it the one step at a time approach to, well, to life, basically. And honestly,
This is brilliant.
it is, and it really ties in well with, mindfulness, focus, prioritization. But what's so cool is how seamlessly you've kind of integrated it into, your everyday routine.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so in this deep dive, we're going to break down how this deceptively simple approach can have a huge impact and get you some serious benefits. Less stress, better productivity, even like a deeper sense of accomplishment.
It really comes down to this. That laser focus on whatever task you've got right in front of you.
Yeah.
Silencing that inner voice that's always asking, what's next? What's next?
Okay, I get the present focus is great and all, but I mean, how did that translate into like less stress? Don't we have to acknowledge the, that to-do list that's just looming in the back of our minds?
It's definitely a balancing act. Think of your mind like a stage. And if you're constantly trying to juggle all those thoughts about everything you have to do, it's like a chaotic circus act going on up there.
Right.
This approach is all about clearing the stage, letting you focus on one performance, one task at a time.
Ah, okay.
And that actually, based on research, that reduces stress hormones.
So it's like it's decluttering our mental space.
Yeah.
Right? Creating this like calmer environment for our brains to work in.
Exactly. And when you're not, splitting your focus a million different ways, you can dedicate more brain power to what's right in front of you. And that leads to, better quality work. In fact, some studies suggest multitasking can actually lower your IQ, at least temporarily.
Oh, wow. So not only am I less stressed, but I'm like literally smarter when I embrace this one step at a time thing. I'm sold. Okay, I'm ready to get down to like the specifics. In your notes, you gave some really awesome real-world examples. Let's start with work. You mentioned that tackling a huge, big project becomes way less daunting using this approach.
Absolutely. That classic question, how do you eat an elephant?
Uh-huh.
Well, the answer, of course, is one bite at a time.
I love that. Okay, you specifically mentioned writing reports in your notes, and you have this whole system for breaking it down, which I gotta say is way more sophisticated than my usual stare blankly at the screen and panic method.
I know the feeling.
Yeah, so walk us through it. What's your process?
Okay, so instead of letting the sheer size of the whole project freak me out, I just zero in on that first essential step. Gathering data. I actually make a separate document just for research, and I don't move on until that's totally complete.
So you're basically silencing that inner voice, that's all. But what about the outline? What about the deadline?
Exactly. Once the research is solid, the outline practically writes itself. It flows naturally instead of feeling like this separate, impossible hurdle.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Each step kind of builds momentum, propelling you forward.
Exactly. And the coolest part is, because you're totally present in each stage, the quality of your work goes way up. The research is deeper, the outline's more logical, and the final report is stronger because you've really given each piece your full attention.
You know what? This one step at a time thing is making me think about way more than just like big projects. Even like my mountain of emails could use this approach.
Definitely. It's easy to get paralyzed by the number of emails, right? So instead of that, just pick one, the most important one.
Okay, yeah.
Give it your full attention. Write a good response, send it, and then move on to the next one. You'd be surprised how much more you get done and how much lighter you feel.
Speaking of focus, this is a perfect segue to the next area you mentioned, which is education. Now, I know you're a big fan of the Pomodoro technique, which is all about those focused intervals, right?
Yes. I love the Pomodoro technique. It's a game changer, especially for anyone who, has trouble with staying focused for long periods. You work in 25-minute chunks, then take short breaks. And research actually shows that this can help you learn and retain information better.
So it's not just about focusing on one subject, but it's also like strategically managing your energy as you study.
Exactly. Our brains naturally work in cycles, right? So by taking those breaks, you're basically working with your natural rhythm. And that makes learning, more effective and even enjoyable.
That's so interesting. It's like sprinting versus running a marathon. Those short bursts of intense focus can actually get you further than just trying to power through for hours and hours.
Exactly. And you can use this same principle for, well, really any learning task. It doesn't matter if it's reading a textbook, working on a problem set, or even like a huge research paper. Just break it down into smaller chunks and the whole process becomes much more efficient and less overwhelming.
This whole thing about breaking things down makes me think of something else you mentioned. It was about learning a new skill, like playing an instrument. You were saying that, like, mastering those fundamentals is crucial before even attempting, like, that epic guitar solo you've always dreamed of.
Oh, absolutely. It's tempting to jump right into the flashy stuff,
Right.
but real mastery, that comes from building a solid foundation.
It's like that time I tried to teach myself to bake. I
Yeah.
was so focused on this super elaborate multi-tiered cake that I like completely ignored the basics. Big mistake. Flour everywhere, the sunken lopsided cake, and one very frustrated baker. That was me.
Haha, I've been there. But it's a
Yeah.
good lesson. It's those initial steps,
Yeah.
the ones that might seem small or boring. Those are actually the most important. Every scale practiced, every chord learned, those are all building blocks to that big goal?
Okay, so we've covered work and education, but how does this one step at a time thing work in relationships? It just feels like a totally different animal.
It might seem different on the surface, but the core idea is the same. Being present in the moment. And in relationships, that translates to, well, active listening.
Okay, I'm starting to see the connection. So it's about silencing our own thoughts and truly focusing on what the other person is saying, right?
I got it. Resisting that urge to interrupt, to plan your response before they've even finished talking. It's about giving them your complete attention, really taking in their words and their emotions without judgment or distraction.
That's such a crucial skill, and honestly, something I think we could all work on. It's so easy to get stuck in our own heads during conversations, thinking about what we're going to say next or getting distracted by something else entirely.
Yeah, and that brings us right back to mindfulness, the one step at a time method, whether it's for conquering your inbox or having a deep conversation. It's all about putting those mindfulness principles into practice.
So it's not just some like time management trick or a productivity hack. It's about cultivating this deeper awareness
Mhm.
of the present moment. I love that. And I feel like we've only just scratched the surface because we haven't even touched on your passion music.
I know, right? But that, my friend, is for the next part of our deep dive.
Stay tuned, everybody.
Ew.
All right, welcome back. Before the break, we were kind of tracing this one step at a time idea through work, education, even relationships. And now's the time for the good stuff. Your passion for music. You were saying this is where this whole philosophy really clicks, and I'm really curious to hear more about that.
It really is. There's just something about, that focused effort of one step at a time that fits so well with the creative flow of music. It's not about making your passion into some strict to-do list, but more about like harnessing that focus to really take your playing to the next level.
Okay, I'm trying to wrap my head around that.
Oh.
I've messed around with music a bit myself, and I always get so caught up in wanting to like play something impressive. Like where does patience fit into all of this?
Think of it like this. All those amazing guitar solos, those incredible piano concertos, they're all built on a foundation of like tons of little steps. Each note, each chord, each scale you master, it's all part of that foundation.
So instead of getting frustrated that I can't like immediately play like Jimi Hendrix, I need to just focus on nailing those basic things first.
Exactly. It's about enjoying the process, finding
Yeah.
the joy in those little victories along the way. And the amazing thing is by focusing on those individual steps, you actually improve faster and get to a higher level of skill.
Makes sense. It's like building a house. You can't just put the roof on without a solid foundation, right? And in music, those fundamental things, maybe they're not as flashy as some crazy guitar solo, but they're like essential for getting to that level.
I like that. And that applies to, well, really any creative thing, painting, writing, sculpting, anything that lights you up. Those early steps, even the ones that seem boring, those are the things that unlock your true potential.
So it's not just about the technical stuff, but it's also about like developing the right mindset, a mindset that embraces the whole process,
Well,
right?
you got it. It's about appreciating the journey just as much as the destination. And honestly, that shift in perspective, it can be really freeing. It can help you express yourself creatively in a more authentic way.
It's like the pressure's off. You're not
Mhm.
so worried about the end result that you forget to like enjoy the actual act of creating. You're really present in each brushstroke, each word, each note.
And that brings us right back to that connection between the one step at a time idea and mindfulness. It's all about cultivating that same awareness, that same intentionality, whether you're, working on a tough project at work or just getting lost in a hobby you love.
It's funny. This whole deep dive has been like a one step at a time process in itself. We started with your system, this idea that seems so simple, and we broke it down, looked at all these different parts of it, and realized just how powerful it really is.
It is amazing, isn't it, how much wisdom can be found in something that seems so simple. And the best part is this is something anyone can do. You don't need special tools or, fancy training. All you need is that willingness to shift your perspective and embrace the power of focused action.
I love that. It's about taking back control, realizing that even small, deliberate actions can lead to big results.
Absolutely. It's about being the architect of your own life, creating something amazing one step at a time.
This is so inspiring. It's like we're not just passively letting life happen to us. We're actually shaping it. We're creating it through this, through this intentional approach.
That's exactly it. The one step at a time philosophy, it gives us that power to take control of our experiences, to approach every moment with intention and purpose. It's about recognizing that even those little steps, those seemingly insignificant actions, can lead to real progress and ultimately to a more fulfilling life.
This has been so insightful. I feel like I've gotten a whole new perspective on everything, really. Not just my work and my hobbies, but like life itself.
I'm so glad to hear that. It's been a pleasure exploring all of this with you.
We'll be back in just a sec to wrap things up and leave you with one final thought to ponder. Stick around. Welcome back to the deep dive, everybody. It's been quite a journey, exploring this whole one step at a time idea that you shared with us.
It has.
From, work and education all the way to relationships and even like your love for music. We've seen how this seemingly simple approach can really have a huge impact, like on pretty much every aspect of life.
It really is remarkable, to see how this concept, the one that you laid out so clearly, how it connects with so many different areas. It's like this universal key, right? To unlocking better focus, being more productive, even like finding more joy in those everyday moments.
And now before we wrap up this whole deep dive, we wanted to give you something you can actually use so that you can take away and put into practice right away.
Definitely. So this is for everyone listening. Here's a little challenge. Think of one area in your life, just one, where you feel, I don't know, maybe stuck, overwhelmed.
Yeah, or just like not making the progress you'd hoped for.
Exactly.
It could be anything. That project at work you've been putting off, a relationship that needs some attention, maybe even like finally picking up that guitar you've always wanted to learn.
Yeah, and here's the key. Apply that one step at a time thinking. Break that, that big scary goal down into the tiniest, most manageable steps you can think of.
Like instead of saying, I'm going to write a novel, it becomes, okay, I'm just going to write one page today.
Right. Or instead of saying, I'm going to completely overhaul my whole fitness routine, it's, I'm going to take a 15-minute walk today.
Exactly. Shifting your focus from like the hugeness of the goal to just, to the simplest, most achievable action you can take right now.
Right now, in this moment.
And you know what? This whole deep dive, it's been a perfect example of that, hasn't it? We took your concept and we broke it down, bit by bit, looking at every little detail, one step at a time.
It really has.
And hopefully, by doing that, we've given you, the tools to approach your own goals and challenges with that same kind of that clarity, purpose, and focus.
That's the goal.
So there you have it. That's our challenge to you. Take one step, then take another. And before you know it, you'll be amazed at how far you've come. You'll see the transformation that happens when you really embrace the power of just taking things one step at a time.
We'd love to hear about your journey, what parts of this deep dive really spoke to you, and how are you planning to use what we talked about in your own life.
Connect with us on social media, send an email, whatever works. We love hearing from you.
We do.
And hey, who knows? Maybe what you share will inspire a whole new deep dive.
I like that.
Yeah, a new exploration into, all the amazing things that can happen when we embrace the power of taking life one step at a time.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep taking those steps.
We'll see you on the next deep dive.
This is DigitView.